Today we are going to talk about the organs of speech which are responsible for speech production, and at the same time they participate or take part in the respiratory system or the respiratory process. The speech apparatus in the human body provides all the movements or the organs of speech movements needed for speech production. And we have a number of organs of speech that participate in speech production directly and indirectly. We are going to explain and illustrate these organs of speech which participate in speech production. The first and the most important organ of speech is the larynx. Of course, before we talk about the larynx, as you know, when we breathe, we take air in. It moves down through the larynx and then the trachea or the windpipe, and then it settles down in the lungs for a while. Later on, we'll try to expel the air out of the chest. So it comes up from the lungs again, it passes through the windpipe and then goes to the larynx. And in the end, it is expelled out of the nostrils and sometimes out of the mouth. Now, the flow that we actually use during the speaking process or speech production is the egressive flow, egressive, pulmonic flow, egressive pulmonic flow, or it is the exhalation flow, exhalation, okay? So when we expel the flow of air out, this is the flow of air which is used for speech production. This is very important to remember. It is not the ingressive, it is the egressive flow of air which is used for speech production. Again, we have number of organs of speech which participate or take part in speech production either directly or indirectly. The first organ of speech, which is considered as the most important one, is the larynx. And sometimes it is called sound box or voice box because it is responsible for the phonation process. And this happens because it contains a very or crucially important part, which is the vocal folds. So a larynx or the larynx is a very complex and independent organ of speech for the importance of its function in voice production in general, not only for speech sounds production. It lies at the top of the trachea, and its structure is made of two cartilages. It looks like a box. And inside that box, we have the vocal folds. Which look like two lips or two bands, two strips of elastic tissue. And sometimes I call it a pair of lips. Now, at the front, the vocal folds are connected together and they are fixed. They are immovable. But on the other end, each strip or each band is connected to a very small cartilage. Is called a arytenoid cartilage. So we have two arytenoid cartilages because at every end or each band of these vocal folds is connected to a cartilage, a arytenoid cartilage. These cartilages control the movement of the vocal folds. So when they are open, when they are closed, it depends on the movement of these cartilages. So when the vocal folds move apart, when they are separated, there is a gap formed between them, and this gap is called glottis. When the arytenoid cartilages contract the vocal folds again, they return to the previous position, and they are what they form what is called closed glottis, because they are pressed against each other, so they close the top of the trachea or the windpipe. So they are either open or closed in normal breathing process. So again, during breathing, they are either open to let the air in or closed to stop the flow of air from escaping through the larynx, okay? The other two movements that the vocal folds can take are the making or forming a narrow glottis, that there is a very narrow gap and narrow opening between the two bands of the vocal folds. And here the flow of air passing between them produces a friction energy, sorry. And the sound that could be heard here looks like or sounds like sound due to this narrow opening between the two bands of the vocal folds. Now, the other movement is when the vocal folds are touching or nearly touching each other, so that the puffs of flow of air coming up from the lungs can push them apart, and then they return to their former position, to the closed position, to the closed position again. This happens rapidly. The opening and the closing of the vocal folds here produces a vibration of the vocal folds. And this is the phonation process. The vocal folds vibrate by the rapid opening and closing. And by this process, we are producing voice in general, even if we are not making specific or particular sounds. But when the vocal folds vibrate, we are producing phonation. For example, if I make this continuous sound like oh, e, zzz. Now I'm making arbitrary sounds, nonsense sounds, but what I'm producing voice. So this is phonation. In this stage or in this position, the vocal folds are now vibrating. They are touching and closing rapidly. The third organ of speech, which may participate also in speech production, is the pharynx. And as you know from the last year, the pharynx forms the back wall of the mouth. It is very important when it co-works with the palate, and later on we'll get to know how the pharynx works with the palate to produce sounds or to direct the flow of air, whether it goes to the nasal cavity or to the mouth cavity. As you see, it's longer in men than in women. Its length in women is 7 centimeters, and in men it's 8 centimeters. It lies at the top of the larynx, of course, as it is the back wall of the mouth. Okay. And after the pharynx, we get to the palate, which forms the upper part of the mouth, and it could be divided into 3 parts. Alveolar ridge. This, you can feel the rough area just behind the upper front teeth. This is the alveolar ridge, which is fixed. It's a bony structure and fixed. It cannot be moved. And the other fixed part, or the middle part of the palate, is the hard palate. It's also fixed, cannot be moved. It looks like an arch at the top of the mouth. And the last part, and the only movable part of the palate, is the soft palate or the velum. Now, they work together, or it works, I mean, the soft palate works together with the pharynx because it makes two important movements. It is either raised so that it touches the back wall of the mouth, I mean the pharynx, and it closes the nose cavity. All the flow of air coming up from the lungs through the windpipe and then the larynx, when it reaches the mouth, it goes out of the mouth rather than the nose because the soft palate is raised and the nose cavity is closed. When the soft palate leaves the pharynx, it is lowered now. It closes the mouth cavity and opens the tract to the nose cavity. So all the flow of air gathers inside the nose cavity and then it is expelled out of the nostrils or out of the nose. The fifth organ of speech is the tongue. It is also a very important organ of speech because of its greatest mobility. It can move in different directions and it can take different shapes. So it could be moved up and down. It could be moved over the sides of the mouth. It could be curved down. It could be curved up, and it could be moved on different heights inside the mouth between the floor of the mouth and the palate. And of course, we use the tongue to produce a large number of sounds, especially vowel sounds. All vowel sounds are produced by using the tongue. Teeth, they are small bones arranged over two rows inside the mouth. We have upper teeth and we have lower teeth. Sometimes they participate directly in sound production, like in the and fe are produced by using teeth. And sometimes they are indirectly participates they indirectly participate in sound production, like we just need the upper teeth and lower teeth to approach each other without touching anything or without making any contact, without forming any narrowing. They are just coming nearer to each other. I mean, these two rows of bones, and that's it. They do not participate directly in the production of some sounds. Then we come to the lips. We have the lower lip and upper lip, and they can take three basic shapes. They are either rounded, spread, or neutral. And it is very important to learn the shapes of lips during the production of vowel sounds, especially vowel sounds, but we cannot avoid talking about shape or the shapes of lips during the production of some consonants. For example, w, this approximant, w, and first sound because we need the lower lip and also we need the lips or both lips in the production of bilabial consonants like p and b. And for the production of w and r, for both of these two consonants, we need the lips to be rounded. Rounded. And for other consonants, it could be spread or neutral. So the lips participate directly in the production of some consonant sounds, and the shapes they take are very important for vowel production.